Violent Video Games and Violent Behavior by Chelsea, Matt, Diana, Priscilla, Jocelyn, and Cassandra. By the 1990s, there were many violent video games such as Duke Nukem, Mortal Kombat, and Resident Evil, and many were worried about these as they're very violent. However, over the years, these games have become more and more lifelike with improved graphics, more detail, and more violence. Video games that aim to kill show characters repeatedly with firearms such as Fortnite and Call of Duty. There are other graphical games like Slender Man, and his story is about him stalking, abducting, and traumatizing, and particularly with children. There was a case of two young girls who lured their friend into the woods and stabbed her 19 times. It was an attempt to impress the Slender Man, a non-fictional, faceless character. Both the girls told the detectives that they felt they had to kill her to become Slender Man's proxies or servants. On close examination while reviewing court cases, lawsuits, and research, there is no direct correlation to video game violence and physical violence. However, there is a correlation between
some studies suggest that after actively participating in violent video games, in particular, boys behaved more aggressively.
Politicians have continually argued that violence on screen contributes to the violence in real life. For instance, a mass shooting. Some of the gunmen that were involved in the school shooting are known to play violent games, in particular, the Columbine shootings, who played the controversial video game Doom.
Killer trained on those. He said he trained on them. 69 dead on an island in Norway, and he spent a year training on video games to prepare himself for his crime. The killer in Florida, he spent 15 hours a day on violent video games. The most all-consuming, all-pervasive thing in this guy's life are these violent video games. And less than a year ago, the American Psychological Association made a definitive statement. There is a clear, unequivocal link between violent video games, violent behavior. Their blood pressure goes up, their heart rate goes up, violent actions go up. The data is persistent and clear across many different forms. You cannot deny it. It is overwhelming.
Into the effects that violent video games have on young minds.
Violent video games have encouraged the killing of innocent people for sport.
I'm hearing more and more people say the level of violence on video games is really shaping young people's thoughts.
Psychologists have advised that children or adolescents who've been exposed to violent video games were more aggressive.
When we measure aggression, however we do it, for children or for adults, teenagers, who have been exposed to violent video games, on average to be more aggressive than people who weren't. Impact of violent video games was similar to the impact of violent TV shows. There is an impact. It's unequivocal. There are dozens of studies to demonstrate this. But I do recall that it wasn't just children, adolescents and young adults, and my guess is older adults, but they too, regardless of their age, displayed more aggressive behaviors after playing these violent video games. But I think in general, the research on video game violence and aggressive behavior is pretty clear. The weight of the evidence suggests that people who play violent video games are more likely to display more aggressive behaviors in a variety of settings. And it could be avatar settings, it could be the type of setting where I said here, where you press the red button, you can hurt someone. If you press the green button, you won't, but you don't really see that person. It's the same principle with any of these activities, whether it's violent video games or violent TV shows or R-rated movies. There's a reason why they're rated R, because people don't think that children are at a level where they can accurately distinguish between what's real and what's make-believe, and you don't cross those boundaries. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
So if you go out and buy violent video games now after this, I'm going to be disappointed.
No, we're just conducting the research.
So we'd like to advocate for children to be more supervised, for parents to be aware of their surroundings. In case there is violence in the house, please be aware that your children might be playing violent video games as well. Make sure they are mature for games and buy the appropriate game for their age. Though there are ratings included on games, there should also be effects that are included as well.